And so Second saved himself, and he's this super genius. Welcome back to another bookish review. Now today we are going to be talking about the 8th and final book in the Missing series by Haddix, Redeemed. Now, you guys know the drill by now. Since this is the 8th book, there will be spoilers for this book and the 7 that came before it. So if you plan on reading the Missing series by Margaret Peterson Haddix, I suggest you skip this review, read the series, and then come back to this one when you're done. Now, assuming everyone that does not want to be spoiled for this book or the series is gone, let's get into this. Now, as you guys know, I wasn't a very big fan of Revealed because I felt like who she revealed Jonah to be was a cop-out. But with as much as Revealed kind of finally cleaned up, like Jonah had saved time, he had saved the missing kids without ruining history and brought them back to the 21st century. He had done everything that the books had set up to accomplish. It was all done. Then, with like 20 pages left in Revealed, it turns out Jonah has a twin that was never hinted at, never teased, never even mentioned in passing. And then that led to having to make this book, Redeemed. And it is called Redeemed for a surprising reason. If you remember, in the book Sabotaged, I couldn't remember which one it was. I've read all 8 of them. It was kind of hard to remember. But in the book Sabotaged, everything has gone wrong. All the tracers are everywhere, and then the tracers disappeared for a while, and that was all because of a man named Second Chance, or Second. Well, this man had disappeared into his own dimension, right? He was gone, taken care of, different dimension. He had his own space. He accomplished what he wanted to. But it turns out in this that Second is back. Hold on. He's not back. This book gets really convoluted, really cluttered, really confusing. I'll get into that in a bit. Now, the first thing I noticed about this book is the fact that we are no longer watching Jonah's perspective. We are watching, in my opinion, the unneeded twins' perspective, Jordan. So we're stuck in this character that was never hinted at, never teased, never even known about until like 20 pages left of the last one. We are stuck in his perspective now. And basically, we're stuck as Jordan, trying to figure out if he's lost his mind. He's trying to figure out why he all of a sudden has someone in his life that looks exactly like him, because they're identical twins, but he's the only one that doesn't seem to realize that he never existed before. So he's like, are you all crazy? I never had a brother. Who is this psycho and why does he look like me? So at the start of the book, it's mainly just catch up for Jordan. So we're reading through stuff that we've already dealt with in the 7 other books. So that kind of got a little hard to read, and it was a bit of a slog because you're like, we just spent 7 other books learning all this stuff, and now you're gonna make us spend like half of the last book going through stuff we already went through just to catch up a character that didn't exist until the previous end of the last book. That was an odd choice. And because of that, it made this book very hard to get through and like a slog because you're playing catch up with a character that didn't exist just 20 pages prior in the first book. And then with having to play catch up and basically rereading a short and condensed version of all the other 7 books comes the convoluted, crazy ass time travel shenanigans of the dimension hopping Second Chance, who we find out has 3 different names. Second Chance, Chase something, I don't even remember the last name, and Kevin. And it's like, he was second when he went villain in Sabotage. He was Chase when he worked for JB as his, like, seer guy or his productionist or whatever you want to call him. And then his real name is Kevin. So this book is called Redeemed, and you're like, well, who has to get redeemed? The twin or who? We are redeeming Second. I don't know why she thought this had to be a thing. If you were going to redeem anyone, wouldn't you try to redeem the bad guys that have been the issue from book 1? So it turns out that Second, in his wisdom, had somehow gotten an elucidator, which is the thing they use to travel through time, back to his teenage self, who had fallen off a cliff because he disobeyed the fence's order and climbed it. And so Second saved himself, and he's this super genius kid, but for some reason, even though Second saved himself originally, Jordan had to go and help him again because the adult Second kidnapped his parents and Jonah and Catherine and held them hostage and was like, okay, they're still teenagers, they're going to stay teenagers, and now I have them. You have to do what I tell you to do if you want to know the secret of how to de-age and re-age people, because Second was apparently the only one who knew how the aging and unaging thing worked. So he was the only one that could fix it. Well, so we go through all of this with Jordan having no idea what the heck he's doing because he's never traveled through time before. Second kidnapping his teenage parents that still think that they have always been a family because Jonah had combined different dimensions to save time. But that's where it starts to get very convoluted because you're like, well, Second already saved himself, but now he kidnapped Jonah and all of them to level their heads over Jordan, and Jordan doesn't know what he's doing, so it just gets very convoluted very quickly. And after Jordan starts to get a hang of things and starts learning how to use the elucidator, we find out that apparently the Second that had kidnapped kidnapped the family and Jordan's family was actually a hologram. And it's like, how did a hologram interact with all of this? How did it have the ability to control the elucidator? And it turns out that the real bad guy that was behind everything this entire time through all of these 8 books was actually the FBI agent that Jonah's family had first went to in the first book, that they had gone to because Jonah was starting to get curious about who he was, who his original family was, because he had gotten that "you're one of the missing letters in the mail." He was trying to figure it out with his family, and it was the FBI agent that they talked to originally from the start. Yet, when you read the first book, either he is a very good actor, or this is just a giant plot hole, but he seems completely unaware of time travel being a thing. Like, there is nothing in the very first book that makes you think this FBI agent knows more than he's saying. But get to this book, and all of a sudden, he was behind everything that happened. He was behind Gary and Hodge, like doing all the kidnapping to make this money. He was behind Second and even killed Second and set up the hologram to trick everyone. And he also made a hologram version of himself as a baby to make it seem like Second had stopped him. Like, it got very convoluted and very, very confusing because you're like, oh, Second's back from his other dimension. Oh, wait, what? He was a hologram this whole time? Why does Jordan fit into all of this? And it turns out he was just using Jordan because he was stupid and ignorant, in Mr. Reardon, the FBI agent's own words. Like, if you... I don't, this one makes no sense, and, like, time travel is confusing as heck. Like, if it wasn't confusing, we'd be time traveling by now. But this one made no sense. It felt like very convoluted. If you want my honest opinion, she could have had Jonah merging the dimensions to save time, which somehow backlashed into fixing his parents, re-aging them to their adult selves, and then that would have been it. You could have dropped the twin line entirely. You could have left Second in his little dimension and called it good and ended it there. You had already saved the kids. You had already saved time. You did not need to do this convoluted stuff. Like, she has this very weird obsession with finding a way to make all these evil characters good again. Like no one would be good and no one would be bad if we could just turn them into babies again and start over. Because every single villain in this story gets turned back into a baby and adopted into a new life to give them a second chance. And it's like, you didn't have to do that. Second was a bad guy. Hodge and Gary were horrible people. Like, I get it. But, like, I think it's saying that everyone deserves a second chance. But let's be honest here. Ain't none of us turning back into babies to have a restart button. That's not a thing. And it's very dangerous messaging because I was very much a person that gave people more chances than they deserved. And guess who it ended up biting in the ass? Me. Like, there comes a time when you have to learn that people sometimes don't deserve a second chance. But her message seems to be, oh, if we could just push the restart button and turn them back into babies, we could give them a better life and help them grow up to be better people. She doesn't explore the psychology of why someone becomes a horrible person. Sometimes people are just born psychopaths. Sometimes they learn the behavior and become sociopaths. And let's be honest, like I said, we don't have the technology to de-age people. So it's very dangerous messaging that just by turning your enemies into babies, you could give them a second chance to be better people. I'm not saying they had to die. Turning them into babies and hitting the restart button, that's a fair punishment. But, like, I don't know. This was very convoluted, very confusing, and more often than not, I just kept thinking, why does this exist? Now, to her credit, it did get better in the last 50 pages, which is where we started to learn that the FBI agent was behind it all in the first place. But this is a 404-page book. I had to suffer through 350 pages before it even got good. And I only finished this book because I'm way more than halfway done. This is the last book of an 8-book series. I'm already halfway there through all the re-explaining stuff we've already lived through. I might as well just finish. So, I I still think this one didn't need to exist. It was convoluted, it was confusing, there were things brought up that didn't need to be, and honestly created a lot of plot holes. So I'm glad I'm done with this series. I enjoyed the rest of them, save for this one and Caught. But now I'm going to go into Betrayed, or The Betrothed. And this one was really interesting because the cover was really pretty and it caught my eye. And then the little blurb that they give us on the inside caught my attention. So we'll see. Alright, I hope you guys enjoyed. This one was a little bit longer, but I had a lot more to say. So hope to see you next time. Bye, guys.